Hello everyone, my name is Stephanie. My team members are Gabriella and Ishmael, and our topic is communication apprehension. Communication apprehension is the way the field of communication defines speech anxiety. Anxiety is the way we respond to real or perceived danger. It's the feeling that something bad is going to happen. People who suffer from speech anxiety, they experience the feelings that if they communicate with people, if they talk in front of a crowd, that something bad is going to come out of it. Their experience is going to be bad. And there are different ranges of the anxieties, and people suffer the anxiety to an extent where they can be helped by doing relaxation exercises, and or the more that they do it, the more they put themselves out there, the less shy they become. And some people suffer it to the extent where they cannot function without medication. They work in jobs, they purposefully pick jobs where they're not required to interact with people very often, where they don't have to ever talk in front of a large crowd, and it affects people's lives differently. And research has shown that it affects more women than men. And according to the textbook, it says that it's looked down less upon in women because women are more expected by society to be more docile, to be more shy, whereas men go to therapy for it. My team member Gabriella is going to talk more about the way that anxiety affects men and women. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that introduction. So, like she said, women tend to be a little bit more nervous when they're giving speeches and presentations. But also, there's been research that women and men tend to communicate differently. Um, there are quite a few things that women do differently that men do, such as women tend to have a higher vocabulary than men do, and men tend to be a bit more competitive when they speak to other individuals, and especially men. Um, Other things such as follow-up questions or tag questions that women use, um, such as what do you think about that, or don't you think? Um, Men also communicate differently with their emotions. They tend to communicate such as with actions, and women tend to communicate with emotions. Um, it's also been researched that with text messages and with new communication technologies, that women tend to communicate with texting almost twice as much than men do throughout the day. When it comes to communicating, women are most likely to communicate and give more personal information than men do. Men are more closed off and um, don't don't give out as much information, or just provide the bare minimum when it comes to any conversation that they have. As stated in our textbook, um, women tend to be or are more likely to be more supportive in a conversation or communicating with other individuals, and are most likely to ask questions at least 3 times um, more than men in any conversation. It makes the conversation continue to move and flow more than a conversation than with a male individual. Now, the differences between communication between a male and a female have been discussed. I'm going to pass it on to Ish, who's going to give some good communication tips and skills, as well as provide a little bit of information regarding small talk, and to summarize the whole group project.
Hi. The video you're watching here today by myself, Stephanie, and Gabrielle was made in an effort to help people who have communication apprehension problems, such as yourself, perhaps. There are 3 goals to this video if you haven't noticed by now. Goal 1 is to help you understand why you are the way you are, why you have communication apprehension. Goal 2 is to help you understand the goals of communication among different genders and different people, so you can consciously or unconsciously adapt to these goals of conversation. Goal 3, where I step in, is to give you tips on making conversation and small talk. A conversation is defined as an exchange of ideas. They're typically done with at least one other person if you don't want to pair crazy. They are used, conversation that is, to form bonds with other people, set priorities, and make decisions. Unfortunately, when making conversation, we often have to deal with a very big part of conversation on the small talk. Small talk is surface level conversation. Sometimes it can appear to be irrelevant, and it often has much to do with a person's biographics or something as irrelevant as the weather when it's a nice sunny day. It can be a pain, but it's very easy to do, and it's a skill that you will find very beneficial. For instance, if I were leaving a sports bar after a huge game, and there was a person that I thought I might generally want to have communication with, I would say something like, "Hey, you look mighty enthusiastic in there. What team were you rooting for?" And they would proceed to tell me what team they were rooting for, and I would proceed to ask them why they're rooting for that team, and from there I might get information on where they're from, and I'd make further conversation upon that. So some of the best conversationalists you'll come across are talk show hosts. Talk show hosts have an ability to communicate with just about everyone for their 15-minute segment that you watch every night. They can communicate with the most over-the-top people, and they can communicate with the most subdued people and make the conversation interesting. Let me provide you a couple tips for making good conversation and small talk. First thing you want to do is make eye contact. One of the tips that you might find helpful is to briefly take note of the person's eye color. This eye contact shows a person that you're listening. Nodding your head is another signal that you're listening. When you're in a conversation, you have to remember that it's a two-way street. You want to listen. Conversations are two-sided, so you have to allow equal time for talking and listening amongst people. Everyone should participate. Before you speak, you should ask yourself what's the intent of the message you're sending. Another helpful conversation tip is to briefly summarize what the speaker is saying to them. This shows understanding. This shows listening. You can ask questions that follow up on something the speaker has said in order to move the conversation in the direction you would like to, or you can ask questions to clarify something that they said. Another important part of conversation is you of course, conversing. You have to provide input or provide subject material. Now, this is perhaps the hardest part. You may feel like you have no input, but most of the time you're underestimating the values of your own experiences. Sometimes you may actually have little input. So try to gain a basic understanding of different topics you come across in conversation through reading. Read news, read books, check out films, pop culture. These are things that may help your communication and small talk with other people. Thank you for your time. Good luck and have a good night.